Now is Senator Ted Cruz, member of the Senate Judiciary Committee. A list of assignments so long that we won't take up your time with all of them. I'm only amazed, Senator, that you have time for all of those assignments. It's great to have you with us.
Lou, it's great to be with you. Thank you for having me.
Well, in no particular order of developments on the day, a $3.7 trillion budget from the president, long awaited, long overdue. Your thoughts?
Well, it is unfortunately continuing a pattern from this administration, a pattern that was reflected also in the budget the Senate Democrats passed 2 weeks ago, which is a pattern of advocating yet more tax increases on top of the $1.7 trillion in tax increases we've already seen, and a pattern of not making the hard decisions we've got to make to get out of control spending, under control, and to turn around our unsustainable deficits and debt. The president's budget doesn't pretend to balance. At any point in perpetuity, it runs massive budgets and massive budget deficits permanently into the future, and I don't think that's a serious solution to the fiscal and economic problems we have right now.
We have watched continuing resolution after continuing resolution take over what has been the traditional role of the budget. Are we to see another round of continuing resolutions as a result of the blueprint the president decided to advance 65 days after it was due?
Well, I think we may well. The president made his decision not to submit his budget while the Senate was considering its own budget, despite the fact that he's legally required to do so. And part of the reason that we've seen government by continuing resolution is that Congress has not been doing its job of passing appropriation bills and making the hard decisions that all of us are elected to decide. You know, Lou, I don't think it's a particularly conservative philosophy to simply want to live within your means, to not want to bankrupt the country. And yet, unfortunately, for the last 4 years, the Democrat-controlled Senate has been unwilling to make any real steps to live within our means.
Yeah, it is extraordinary when you put it that way, to think that conservative is now somehow in an equation that results in you must follow the law, you must follow the traditional values of governance, and provide oversight as well as appropriation and follow the Constitution. That's pretty radical stuff, isn't it?
That used to be bipartisan. There used to be wide agreement on that, but sadly we're living in a different era. We're living in an era where for 4 years the Democrats refused to pass a budget at all, and then when they did, their budget would raise taxes an additional $1.5 trillion on top of $1.7 trillion in tax increases that have already happened. It doesn't meaningfully cut spending in any real way. It never balances, and it does nothing to save and reform entitlements, Social Security and Medicare, to preserve those programs for seniors and make sure they are strong and vibrant going forward so next generations can rely on those critical bulwarks.
The Senate, much of its time being taken up, as with the House, on gun control. Senators Toomey and Manchin coming up with a deal. Now, I don't remember the last time that it became a big deal for two senators to reach a deal, but that is sort of the way it is. That is the environment now down there. Is that deal of theirs between the two of them something that's going to move forward as legislation that will be taken seriously by both parties?
Well, I think it will be taken seriously. I don't know whether it'll pass or not. In my view, what the federal government should be doing is we should be focusing on prosecuting and punishing and preventing violent criminals. And we should be safeguarding the constitutional rights of law-abiding citizens. I think all of us were horrified by what happened in Sandy Hook. I've got 2 little girls at home, and no parent could see children senselessly murdered and not be anything but speechless and just taken aback at the depravity and the horror of it. But I think it is also sad that so many politicians are trying to take advantage of that tragedy, not to pass legislation targeting violent criminals, but instead working to take away the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms of law-abiding, peaceful citizens. Lou, let me tell you something interesting that most people don't know. In 2010,
Senator, could I do this? Could I ask you to give us an opportunity to go to break very quickly because we've run up against one of those things.
Sure.
If you wouldn't mind, we'll take a quick break. We'll come right back. We're talking with Senator Ted Cruz, and you don't want to miss a moment of what he's got to say on the other side. We're talking with Senator Ted Cruz, and Senator, I interrupted you, and I apologize for that. If you will, sir.
Sure. What I was saying is, unfortunately, the Obama administration has not made it a priority to prosecute felons who try to illegally purchase guns. Right. In 2010, over 15,000 felons and fugitives tried to illegally purchase a gun and were turned down. Out of those 15,000, the Obama Justice Department prosecuted just 44. Let me repeat those numbers. Out of 15,000 felons and fugitives illegally trying to purchase a gun, the Obama Justice Department only prosecuted 44. I'm introducing legislation to create a task force in the Department of Justice. We need to prosecute violent felons and fugitives. We need to go after them to protect ourselves against violent crime, and we shouldn't be stripping away the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms of lawful, peaceful citizens.
Senator Reid, the majority leader, as you know, has called for a cloture vote at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning. You and a number of your colleagues have also said that you will filibuster should the need arise. Is it your sense that the need will arise, and do you still are you still committed to a filibuster of gun control legislation?
Well, what I think is critical, along with Senator Paul and Senator Lee and a number of other senators, is that for any bill that abridges the Bill of Rights, and in particular undermines our Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms, that at a minimum it should be subject to a 60-vote threshold, that the Senate should not adopt it just with 51 votes, but we should have a higher threshold for protecting the Bill of Rights. And that's what we're insisting upon. That's what the cloture vote will produce.
And immigration reform, it's becoming very difficult to understand some of what is happening, because the Senate is becoming all of these very important senators, whether they're in groups of 2 or gangs of 8, and the American people aren't getting exactly the clearest view of what's being deliberated by our august Senate. And I know that many of you are not being briefed by the gang of 8. What is the conservative view? What is the Senator Ted Cruz view of the way in which business is being conducted by both parties right now in the Senate?
Well, I'll confess, Lou, my mom always told me to stay away from gangs. So I have not been involved in the Gang of 8 deliberations. I want to wait and see what they produce. At this point, we have not actually seen a statute. We've seen some outlines. We've seen some press releases. There are rumors that the bill is as much as 1,500 pages. And I certainly hope that's not the case. In my view, there's a lot of bipartisan agreement on immigration. If we focused where there was agreement, number one, we would get serious about securing the borders, about providing manpower and technology to finally stop the problem of illegal immigration. And number two, we would devote resources to improving and streamlining legal immigration so that we can welcome and celebrate those who follow the law and come here seeking the American dream. That's where we should focus. And I'm concerned that the president's focus on insisting on a path to citizenship for those here illegally is designed to scuttle the entire bill, because he wants a political issue rather than actually to pass common sense immigration reform.
Well, Senator, we're going to have to leave it there. I wish we had much more time. I hope you'll come back soon. We'd like to hear more of your thoughts on the issues. It seems like an ever-mounting number of issues that are critically important to the nation. Senator, thanks for being with us here tonight.
Thanks for having me, Lou.
Senator Ted Cruz.